As we talk about data collection, we're dealing with statistics. So let's read. There's a lot of reading in this one, but the population is the entire group I wish to learn about. The sample is the group that I pull from the population to study and collect data from. So here's the deal. If I want to know the average age of Americans, I'm not going to find out the age of every single American. That is hard to do. Now, I know we do a census every 10 years, but that'd be hard to do. So I'm going to get a sample of them and extrapolate on that data and say, well, even though I don't know the age of every single American in America, and then I divide and find the average, I can get a sample of them. But I need to get the right sample. So I do want to be careful that I don't go to a place that is more young than old or more old than young, a place that has a good representation, or maybe even several different places. I can pick several different counties or cities or all kinds of things all across America in order to get a sample that would truly represent the population. Okay? If I want to know the average age of Americans, I wouldn't do this at retirement communities and just poll them, be like, man, Americans are much older than I thought. No, because we're not asking a wide range of people. Okay, so with that in mind, let's just, for this, identify the population in the sample of each of these. You want to study the heights of males in North Carolina. To collect data, you will look at a group of 1,000 men from Greensboro. What is the population? The population is the entire group I want to learn about, and the population in this case would be men in North Carolina. So males in North Carolina. That's what I want to do. I want to know the heights of males in North Carolina. Maybe I want the average. Maybe I'm just trying to figure out some data from that. But I'm not going to ask every single guy. I'm only going to ask 1,000 men from Greensboro. Now, that may not be the best thing to do because maybe people in Greensboro are taller, shorter, or whatever. I need maybe Greensboro, Winston-Salem, some rural areas. I might need to get a good sampling of other things. But for this, the sample was 1,000 men in Greensboro. 1,000 men in Greensboro. It's really that simple. We're just identifying what I want to know and then who I ask in order to find out. So you want to know the average age of Americans. Oh, there's that example again. So you look at the average age of people in Virginia, which may not be the best thing to do because maybe people in Virginia are skewed younger or skewed older than the other population. So what is the population? I really want to know the age of Americans. So my population is Americans. But what is the sample? It's just the people in Virginia. So the Virginians. There we go. You want to study which dog breed is the most popular among dog breeders in North Carolina. Okay, this is where things get a little, not tricky, but wordy if you're not careful. Dog breeders, not dog owners, okay? So when they ask, what's the population? You're going to be like, North Carolinians. No. Dog owners. No, not dog owners. Dog breeders. So to collect data, you survey dog owners in Randolph County. Oh, well, that's getting a little bit off. So this one's going to be a little bit off, okay? But what is the population? Dog breeders in NC, which is different than dog owners. What is the sample? This is going to be a very messed up survey because you're asking dog owners rather than dog breeders. Now, it's going to give you some good data, but not all dog owners are going to get their dogs from dog breeders, okay? Just saying. So this is going to be dog owners in North Carolina. So if I want to know something about a population, then I will need to sample it. Now, let's zoom out a little bit and talk about what we can be doing in different contexts. We can do studies to determine something. We can do an observational study, and in an observational study, a researcher observes and measures characteristics of interest in part of a population. Hard for me to read. An example would be they observed and recorded the mouthing behavior of non-food objects of children up to 3 years old. So they would just like put these kids in a daycare, and they would just be like, all right, let's see what they do. And they would observe them. Okay, we're just talking about different things we can do to collect data. Up until this point, we talked about surveying people, and now we're going to kind of zoom out with studies. Observational study. An experiment, you're going to experiment. That one's pretty self-explanatory. A simulation is when it would be unethical or unreasonable to simulate. And so, for example, automobile manufacturers use simulations with dummies to study the effects of crashes on humans. You need to do a simulation in that context because, it would be very unethical to do that otherwise. A survey is what we started the entire lesson by asking, and then there are different ways that you can take the survey. So as we move on to a few example problems, let's see what would be the best thing to do. In exercises 1 through 4, decide which method of data collection you would use to collect data for the study. The study on the effect of the digestive system, a study of the effect on the digestive system of potato chips made with a fat substitute. Okay, so if we're going to figure that one out, what would we do? Would we do let's start at the bottom, a survey? No, we wouldn't be like, well, how's this fat substitute working out for you on potato chips? No. Would we do a simulation? Possibly. Let's hold that thought. Would we do an experiment? I believe we would. I believe that would be the best thing to do. We would do some sort of experiment and an observational study, just kind of staring at people as they eat potato chips. Let's not do that. So this one would be an experiment. A lot of these are going to be common sense. Now, you could make the argument for a simulation here, but a lot of times in medical things that aren't life-threatening, then it would be ethical and realistic to do an experiment. Okay, a study of the effect of a product's warning label to determine whether consumers still buy the product. Okay, we can have a couple different things here. So I want to know if there's a warning label on, cigarettes or vapes or maybe even some like junk food or things like that. So a study of the effect of a warning label. There's a warning label on it, and then I wanted to decide if consumers would still buy the product. What can I do? Let's start at the bottom again. Could I survey them? I believe I could. I could be like, hey, you gonna buy this thing? Because this is what it says it's gonna do to your body. Right? Could I do a simulation? Not really, because we're dealing with human behavior here. So not a simulation. Could I do an experiment? An experiment to do what? No, this is not like a scientific experiment. Observational study, could I observe people? I could actually. I could awkwardly sit in the cigarette aisle at the store and just see if people are going to read the label or not and do it. Now, I personally think a survey would be better. Sit on a stool in the store and watch them as they pick up a pack of cigarettes and be like, hey, you reading the survey? You reading the warning label? You going to buy that? No? Okay. And then I'll mark something on the clipboard. You better not. It's dangerous. Anyway, survey. You could also make the argument for an observational study. If I could spell it right, that'd be great. Observational study. Okay. A study of how fast a virus would spread in a metropolitan area. Just FYI, I had been using this example years before the pandemic started. Would you observe it? Let's not. Now, to find out how fast it would spread and it's not happened yet, no, don't do that. Don't just observe something and make it happen. That's not nice. Same with an experiment. No, you're not going to drop a vial of a virus on the street and be like, let's see how fast this spreads. Don't do that. Simulation or survey, like you wouldn't ask people about it, but there would be a simulation involved. So we could do a simulation. There's all kinds of computer simulations based on population density and probably even airflow, things like that, climate, that kind of thing. Okay, a study of the ages of the 535 members of the U.S. Congress. I want to know how old these men and women are. Would I observe them? I mean, you could watch C-SPAN. It's a channel on cable where you get to watch like all the goings on of Congress. Lots of fun. Could I do an experiment? I'm not going to do an experiment on the members of Congress. I'm not going to do a simulation either, like, hey, let's get some hand puppets of the U.S. Congress. No, don't. Could I do a survey? I could, actually. I could just ask them. I could just look them up if I want to be like that. But this would be a survey type situation. Okay. From a class containing 12 girls and 10 boys, 3 students are to be selected to serve on a school advisory panel. There are 4 different methods of making the selection. Okay, so I have 12 girls and 10 boys in this particular class, and I'm going to pick 3 of them. So I want to know the best way to do it. So now we're out of the territory of, is this an experiment? Is this a survey? Is this a simulation? We're out of that territory again. Now we're back to the territory of what's the best way to choose this, okay? Select the first 3 names on the class roll, all right? Select the first 3 students who volunteer, okay? Place the names of the 22 students in a box and mix them thoroughly. Select 3 names from the box. And select the first 3 students who show up for class tomorrow. Okay, so let's think about this. And assuming this is not an election, all right, I want to make this clear. This is not an election. And this is not, oh, let's pick the best candidate. What I'm really getting at with this problem, even though it wasn't necessarily worded this way, is I want to get a selection of people that will really represent this class. They're going to serve on a school advisory panel. I don't necessarily want all girls or all boys. I don't necessarily want all the smartest or the ones that may struggle. I want a mix. So let's start at the bottom. Select the first 3 students who show up for class tomorrow. You're going to pick 3 of the most punctual, brightest students possibly. And when you do that, then you will be not representing everyone, okay? Now, you're going to get people that'll probably serve very well, but if we're going for a representation of all types of ages, well, it wouldn't be ages, they're all in the same class, but just kind of a thorough mix, a heterogeneous mix, then you're going to get the punctual ones, which might be good for what you're wanting to do, but along with punctuality is going to come some other level of perspective potentially that could create bias. All right. Place the names of the 22 students in a box and mix them thoroughly. Select 3 names from the box. That sounds random. Let's move on. Select the first 3 students who volunteer. Now, we can make the argument if they want to do it, then they should just, volunteer and do it. But if we're going to get the first 3 who volunteer, then we're not going to get the number 4, 5, and 6 who might have a little bit slower hands when they're trying to raise their hands, but they would also represent the class well. Select the first 3 names on the class roll. Now we're just going alphabetical. What if the first 3 names on the class roll are all in the same family? They're the triplets, the Adams triplets. We might have that situation. So, which is the best sampling method if you want the school panel to represent a fair and representative view of the opinions of your class? There's the way the wording comes in. Explain the weakness of the 3 not selected to be the best. I'm not going to write that out. I'm going to just talk through it briefly one more time. Here's my choice. That randomly selects them. And again, first 3 students who show up for class tomorrow, you're getting the punctual ones. You're getting the ones who are going to be potentially top of the class in some way. Select the first 3 who volunteer. You're not giving everyone a chance to really give this a shot. Select the first 3 names on the class roll. That may not necessarily be fair to everyone else on the bottom of the roll, the Zmithrovich kid. And that person whose last name starts with a Z isn't going to get a chance to serve on the advisory committee, and therefore he will not be, his part of the alphabet will not be represented. And when you do that, you're not representing the full spectrum of students.